Hey guys, and welcome back, and happy International Women's Day. So I am filming this on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day, but I know it's not going to be released till Wednesday the 13th, but I just wanted to say it anyway. And today is going to be a slightly different video. You guys obviously clicked in it because the title's got you. But this is going to be around my mental health journey. It's going to be around the time I got spiked and how that kick-started my mental health journey and kind of how I'm getting on with that now. It's nothing I've actually put online before. It's not something I've ever spoken about with my friends. A couple of friends know, my family obviously know, and my in-laws know, but other than that, until I started doing this, I didn't really post much on social media, especially not around that sort of stuff, because you never really know who's looking at your stories, you never really know what people are thinking, and at that time I didn't really want to be judged, or I didn't want to talk about it any more than I had to. But now that's changed because I feel as though it's something that should be spoken about. You know, it happened, I can't change that it's happened, but I also shouldn't hide away from the fact it did happen, and the help that I got could potentially help someone else, so I want to share this. To make it less awkward for myself, because it does make me a little bit teary when I talk about it, I am going to do my makeup as we do this. It's also fight night tonight, so we're watching the fight. Got friends coming over, so I just want to make sure that I don't look like this, basically. Okay, so I will post everything down below that I use on my skin, so you guys know exactly what it is I'm using if you're interested. Also just stops me from kind of stopping in the story and showing you products that kind of stop it from breaking the flow. Okay, so this all happened back in 2016, so it was a while ago that it happened, but I just hope that kind of gives you an idea of how long it's taken for me to talk about it. Not for the fact that I was still scared or anything like that, but you just sometimes don't always know if you should talk about these things. Is it going to be received well, especially when there's such a stigma around? Did I provoke it? Was I wearing something? Did I do something that kind of, you know, asked for it? And it does put you off talking about this sort of stuff, so that's kind of justification for why I haven't wanted to speak about it. But I'm also now a wellbeing coach where I work, and it would be remiss of me to be able to talk to people and ask people to talk to me if I didn't feel like I could share my experience. This is me sharing everything with you guys. So this happened, like I said, back in 2016, and it literally all started with a night out, as it always does. It was a bit of a weird one. So it was a night out where I'd be seeing my ex for the first time in 3 years. We had the same friend group, and you know, that was kind of, it was a point of nerves for me. We had been friends for a long time before we got together, and then it didn't work out. It was messy. The breakup was messy, because we were living together in his parents' house, and it was awkward. That probably gave me anxieties that I wasn't really expecting to have. But I was nervous because, you know, I'm with my new boyfriend, my now husband, and you're kind of, he was single, he had been in relationships since me and him broken up, but it's awkward, isn't it? You're there, you're happy, and yeah, it was uncomfortable. So, I mean, there's a big group of us, we're all having a drink, it's the first drink, and that's all good, and then we all decide to have a second drink, but we get up from our table, and I leave my drink there. Now, I know that that's the stupidest thing to do, I know that now, and I should have known it then. But I didn't really think about it. I was with a group of friends. I thought there'd be someone sitting at the table, and obviously assumed wrong. And anyway, after that, went back, had my drink. Didn't really think too much about it. That's all I remember until about 2 hours later, an hour, 2 hours later. I went to my boyfriend and I just said, something isn't right, because those last 2 hours have just gone and I don't remember anything. I remember, I think, going up the stairs and coming down, and that was it. I don't know what's happened. I'll be forever grateful that he took me seriously, because I said to him, I think I might have been spiked. I was coherent enough to say that I think something is wrong, something isn't right. I've had a lot of people before say, well, how do you know? When I've sort of spoken to people and I've said, you know, there's this video about someone being spiked and they didn't know that where the last 2 hours had gone, and they're like, well, how do they know they've been spiked? You know when you've been spiked. You know yourself. You know what is and isn't normal for you. And I knew something wasn't right. I can handle more than 2 glasses of wine, so I kind of knew something was wrong. So my boyfriend was like, right, okay, well, let's go, let's get you out of here, because obviously there's something is not right. As soon as the air hit me, I couldn't walk anymore. I just lost the ability to walk. Like, my legs went to jelly. Now, what I'm telling you now is all what's been told to me, because I don't remember any of this. Yeah, my legs went to jelly and I couldn't walk. Apparently taxi drivers wouldn't take us because they assumed I was drunk. Obviously there's a worry that I was going to be sick in their cab, so they didn't want to take me. So my boyfriend ended up calling his mum, got home with her. Now, I lived in a flat at the time, and so they got me in the elevator and got me in the house. Now, as soon as I got in, I just wanted to lie on the floor in the hallway, which I would never have done in my right mind. But they just put me there and they just left me, because obviously that's where I wanted to be for whatever reason. I apparently woke up at some point in the night, early morning, got up and went into the bedroom. My boyfriend did stay awake all night with me to make sure that I didn't choke on anything, which I'll be forever grateful for. I don't actually remember anything that happened around that time. I don't, which gives you a sense of anxiety in a way that you don't know what you've done. Like, you're not in your right mind, you don't know if you've done something you wouldn't normally do and things like that. And that gave me, like, I woke up and that thought hit my head and I couldn't control my emotions. I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I've killed someone? What if I, you know? And lucky my boyfriend was like, look, I don't think you would have anyway, but if you have, like, it's not you, so don't worry about it. And having someone that understanding is rare. I was so thankful that he was so kind of like, you know, this isn't you, it's okay. So after all that happened, obviously we told my parents and my brothers, because I don't live near them, or at the time I didn't live near them. They lived at least, I think it was at least 2.5 hours away. One brother lives up north, he lives about 6 hours from me. My parents and my other brother at the time lived about 2.5 to 3 hours down south. So I didn't really have my parents around straight away, which I think, as much as I really appreciate everything my in-laws do for me, when you want your parents, you want your parents. When you want your mum, you want your mum. So we informed everybody what had happened, who needed to know. Got some texts from some friends who'd seen me on the night and who knew that something was wrong and it wasn't me. That was, like, you know, which was really kind of them. And I was starving. I remember that. I woke up and I was absolutely starving. After that, something kind of shifted in me. Something changed. I lost a lot of my confidence. I lost a lot of what I felt as my independence. At the time I didn't drive anyway, so I had somewhat limited independence in a way of like a car and stuff. But I would normally have been quite happy to walk myself into town, to do a bit of shopping. I would have been quite happy to get on a bus, to go off and go to work. I didn't feel I could do that anymore. That felt so scary. And it got to the point where if I sat on a bus going to work, I didn't want anyone behind me. I'd have to sit at the back if I could, or as close to the back, and if I couldn't sit at the back, I'd sit at a slight angle so that I knew what was going on. I didn't feel I could have my music in and loud. I had to have one headphone in and one out, the music turned down, so that if anything did happen, I was prepared, I was ready. And that wasn't something I'd really lived with before, this kind of fear. I wasn't oblivious to what was going on around me, but like, I at least was a bit more chill about it. But that all changed. That literally all changed overnight. Now, I did take a little bit of time off work because of the stress of it. I couldn't take much, unfortunately. Just the industry I worked in at the time. I couldn't have taken much. So I took what I was allowed to take, and then I had to get back to work. Now, in this time of me taking time off work, I did actually go to the doctors because I wasn't me. I knew I wasn't me. Things that I could have previously coped with really, really well would absolutely floor me. Simple tasks like, you know, putting out the rubbish and recycling I would just be filled with absolute fear, and I didn't understand it, and I didn't like it. I didn't want to live in this perpetual state of fear and upset. So we went to the doctors. I say we because I knew an extent of what happened to me. My boyfriend knew the rest of what happened, or he saw, and obviously he had seen a few things in myself which were different. Maybe I wouldn't clock, and also I didn't want to go on my own. I wanted to have him there. So he came with me, we went to the doctors, and she said that she thought some counselling could maybe be something that I could do where I could talk through with someone how I was feeling and try and kind of help me cope and help me get some mechanisms to cope. Sounds like a great idea. In the UK, I think you get something like 30 hours of free counselling on the NHS. So, and I'd never had any on the NHS, so I thought, well, let's give this a go. And I referred to something called Time to Talk, or Let's Talk, one of them. And basically what it is, I think it's an NHS project, and you go online, you fill this form in, and I think you have to give a little bit of detail as to why you're referring yourself, and then you wait and you get a phone call to say, we've got your application, or I guess it is an application. What we're going to do is we're going to schedule in a call with you so we can just chat about what is the best route forward for you, what is the best course of action, and how can we help you. And I thought, okay, cool, that sounds great. I imagine it's going to be a case of kind of, what happened, or how are you feeling, and that sort of thing, which I could deal with. I thought, that's fine. I didn't have any, and maybe I should have asked, but I didn't have any sort of idea what was going to happen in this call. So I decided to book it during work hours, and oh my gosh, that was such a silly thing to do on my part. The call lasted for an hour, my entire lunch break, and at that point it didn't really bother me because I wasn't actually really eating very much. I was a little bit, I'd gone in on myself a lot at that point. So booked this call in, had this call, and in the call they go through everything. They ask you if you've ever had dark thoughts, if you've thought about unsubscribing from the world, have you ever harmed yourself, things like that. And without going into too much detail, there were a few things which she mentioned and I had to admit that I had done, or I, had considered in the past, or whatever, anything like that. And it's draining. It's so draining, because you're constantly being taken back to a place which you don't necessarily want to be. Maybe you've repressed the memories for a reason, anything like that, and it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but you have to do it. So that was difficult, and I worked in retail as client facing, so coming out of my lunch to do that was a lot, and you have to kind of like just switch, and it was hard. What they do once you've done all these questions is they basically score you on this board, and you get your results, and my results came back as moderate severe depression and severe anxiety. I didn't know what they meant by that at all. I just knew that I had a diagnosis now, and basically she just said to me that your depression is going to keep dipping in and out in life, it's what you've got now, but your anxiety is probably going to be a pretty much constant. And yeah, that has been true to some extent, but we'll go on to a bit about that a bit later on. But then she started to say about therapy, and there were two options for me. The first option was group therapy, where I'm in a room with a group of people and we are all together, and it's like it sounds, group therapy. Or I could do one-on-one therapy over the phone. So group therapy was in person, obviously, 'cause it's easier. One-on-ones over the phone. Now at the time, and to be honest with you, I think I'd do the same now, I don't know. At the time, I didn't feel like sitting on a phone with someone was going to be conducive for me. I didn't feel like it was going to help. I felt as though I was going to feel more anxious, which is weird in hindsight, sitting on a phone with someone expecting me to talk, as opposed to going and sitting in a room full of strangers. But, you know, that at that time, that logic made sense. Now, the only thing with group therapy is that it's obviously done in sessions. So it's 6 weeks. It was every Thursday for 6 weeks I had to go, which is okay, but you're having to wait until there's a session available, you know, till there is a new set of sessions. Whereas if I'd gone with the one-on-one, it would have been as soon as the next therapist was available. So there was a little bit of waiting going on for me. So yeah, there was a little bit of waiting involved. During this time, my anxieties and depression hadn't really eased. In a way, it had kind of got a little bit worse. I was struggling to do basic things for myself, so things like keeping my house in a good way, walking my dog, just little things that 2 weeks before wouldn't have fazed me. I would have been absolutely fine. But unfortunately, you know, it knocked my confidence in every single part of my life. And I struggled to do things for myself. Also during this time, my partner had been basically by my side. I struggled to go out without him. I had to be out. If I had to go out, he had to come with me. It was just silly little things like that. And it got to a point where I actually called my mum and I said, I'm really struggling. I can't do the basic stuff. Like, I'm just washing clothes that I need. I've got washing piling up. I can't cope with this. And so we made the decision that we were gonna free my boyfriend for the day. And we said, look, just go and do something fun, go see some friends. You've been literally my guide for the last few weeks. Like, this isn't like fair on you. So we sent him off to go do something for the day, and my parents came up and they helped me kind of get everything in order. And they do say a clean house, a clean mind, and it's something that really does resonate with me. I really do like to have my space around me tidy, because it allows me to then function better. So they came up and they helped me clean my flat, things that I needed to do, like cleaning the shower. They took me food shopping, stuff that, you know, otherwise my boyfriend would have had to do for me. And it really helped because they accepted I didn't really want to talk about it. So they let me talk about anything else, and I probably talked about absolute nonsense, but to have someone there who wasn't expecting me to talk was such a relief, and it was so comforting in a way. Eventually my slot for my therapy rolled around, and as I said, it was 6 weeks, 6 o'clock once a week for 6 weeks, and I didn't want to go. I really didn't want to go. I felt really uncomfortable going. I don't know if more so than if I'd just done it on the phone, but I felt really uncomfortable. I knew I was going to be uncomfortable, and I felt really uncomfortable. And the only thing with group therapy is that they can't fix you. They can't talk about your own issue. They can't sit and deep dive into you, because you're in a room of up to 15 people, I think it was. So we talked about CBT, so cognitive behavioural therapy, and basically how we can see the signs that things aren't right and how we can potentially stop us from going there, I guess. But I had the biggest imposter syndrome when I was there. At this time, like I said, I'd had a few weeks, and I'm not saying I had a few weeks and I was fixed. That's not what I'm getting at. But I'd had time and the right people around me in order to exist, and exist how I needed to exist, which in a way is healing. I was still in some senses agoraphobic. I was still uncomfortable doing things on my own. You know, I'd managed. I'd got myself through what I thought was the worst of it. And when you get there and there's people who are having it way worse than you, and I was thinking, why am I here? Like, someone else probably deserves this more than I do. These people are gonna look at me and think I'm just moaning, I'm just whining. But no one did. I don't know if it's because we didn't really get the opportunity to talk a bit about why we were there, which actually I'm really grateful for, because I think that would have been really anxious. Like, that's an anxiety-ridden attack waiting to happen. But yeah, it allowed me to... The session allowed me to sit at the back and kind of hide, but listen to what they were saying. And it was all about coping techniques, and they explained the bucket. So, you know, if you imagine your emotions are a bucket, and your bucket shows how overwhelmed you are, basically, and how high the bucket is shows how overwhelmed you are. And when it's really full, almost overflowing point, and something else goes in it, and it spills, that's your anxieties and your emotions spilling over, which was a good way to explain it and to understand it. However, it's all very well, I found, saying these are your techniques on how you're going to prevent this from happening, but there was nothing showing me how I could help myself now, with the exception of a diary which I'd seen online, whereby you write down how you're feeling, then you come back to it in the evening and you say whether you feel better now, what happened to make you feel better, what did you do, now you look back at it, what do you think the situation was really about? And I did that for a bit, but then sometimes I couldn't explain it. I felt that way. I don't know why I felt that way, but I did. And then that started to get a bit more demoralising for me, because I couldn't explain why I felt the way I did. Now these things might work for other people, but they didn't work for me. And what I needed to know was measures in place to help me get through my day-to-day. So I found them on my own. Just with my eyes off camera, because it's hard to do those and talk at the same time. But I had to find ways to cope and deal with my current anxieties, and also how to talk about them with people in my day-to-day life. I had to figure that out. Now, I'm going to be as supportive as I needed them to be, so I decided to leave. And I went to a new job, and it was probably about 2 years before I told anyone in my new job about my mental health battle and where I was in. I don't know why, but I think part of it was you don't want to sit there and be like, hi, I'm new, my name is blah 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 and I have mental health issues. Like, I didn't want to do that. I think in a way I wanted a fresh start. I didn't want anyone to know about that side of my life. And then the bullying started. Now, I've been bullied basically my entire life. I am used to it, unfortunately. I shouldn't say that, but I am. But when it's someone who is meant to be mentoring you, when it's someone whilst you're in your adult life, it does hit harder. I was basically told to make allowances for them because they were going through something, at which point I blurted out saying they're not the only ones going through something, and told my manager at the time what was going on. And I said, it gave me intense anxiety, this bullying, and I don't want to come to work and all this sort of stuff. At that point, he hadn't had mental health issues. He'd never really had to deal with anyone who's been diagnosed with mental health issues. So I said to him, look, the best way I can describe it to you is by using trains. And that got me a weird look to begin with. And, it is a weird one, but it made sense to me. So the way I describe it to people is, imagine you have, let's say, 4 trains, and they're all on their own track, but now they're all trying to get on the same track. Each train is a thought. Each train is a worry or anxiety. And they're all vying to be at the very front of my head, but there's only one space. So that's kind of how I would explain to my boss my level of how overwhelmed I was feeling and how intense my anxiety was. If it was like a 2-train day, we knew I'd be right. I may be a bit slower than normal, but I'll be alright. If it was like a 7 training day, then I kind of had to like reassess what I was doing that day. And that's kind of how it would work. And it sounds so childish and it sounds so silly, but that was the only way I could explain it. I did eventually end up leaving that job. And actually the job I'm in now, again, I haven't said anything to them, but I know that if I did, it would be like, okay, that's cool. But like I said, I'm a mental health coach now. So for me to be able to talk to people and put them at ease, that actually I potentially know what anxiety feels like for them. My journey is still very much ongoing. I have days where I have almost like anxiety attacks and I couldn't tell you why. I don't understand them. I just get this feeling in my chest. I have nights of anxiety dreams, and you know, sometimes I won't be myself and people will go, "Are you okay?" And I'll be like, "I'm fine." And those who know me go, "But are you?" And those who really know me go, "You tell me when you're ready." And that's the difference. I have surrounded myself with people who know that I will talk to them if and when I am ready to. The worst thing is feeling pressured into talking to someone about something when you're not ready to. The anxiety that creates and the pressure that you're then put under. It's hard. It is hard. But I think that's one of the things that I would say is definitely, if you can, get to see someone. I know there's loads of good apps out there, like BetterHelp is meant to be quite good, or if you're in the UK, the NHS might be able to help you. But definitely do try and seek some help if you need to. If things have happened where, you know, you've been compromised on a night out like I was, it took me a long time, probably took me nearly a year to go out again. And at that point, my boyfriend was very much like, "What's your drink?" If anyone went to buy me a drink, he'd like, "Make sure you know where the glass is." Like, we became very aware, and you know, it's probably part of the reason I don't really drink anymore is because I am concerned about it could happen again. And I know things now to prevent it, like not leaving my drink like down. But even if I looked away, someone could have slipped. You don't know. That's the thing. So I'm trying in a way to learn but not blame myself for it. Another thing that I think is like super important for everyone to remember is that not everyone's going to understand. Some people really will, and that's amazing when they do, but not everyone understands. And you know, some people will ask you, "Well, what were you wearing?" Or, you know, "Were you smiling at someone?" And it's like, it's being put on me. What was I wearing? What was I doing? What things was I giving out? None, as far as I was aware, and I was wearing jeans. So I wasn't dressed in a way to, you know, had come hither way. I wasn't giving signals out to anyone except for the man that I was there with. Why is it never, if this person hadn't done this wouldn't have happened? Why is it always on the woman? That's a question we should be asking. Why is it always on the woman? But that, I digress. That is something that I could sit here and talk about for ages. But what I'm saying is, you may, like me, not be 100% blameless, but you're not 100% to blame either. And you know, it took me a little bit to kind of realise that I am the victim here. Some of it, yes, is my own doing, but at the same time, I didn't go out there looking for this to happen to me, and it did. One thing I will say is that it does happen to anyone. It happens to men as well. Unfortunately, it happened to someone I know, and he couldn't live with himself anymore, literally, and he unsubscribed. So it does happen to all sorts of people for all sorts of reasons, whether it's just for sport, whether there's actually more malice intent and malicious intent than just spiking someone. but it does happen to anyone. Now, I'm not saying this to scare anyone, absolutely not, but I just want people to be aware that there are people out there that do this, and it does have long-lasting effects. Like, I'm going to be living with these effects potentially for the rest of my life. You know, the anxieties will probably never go away, but there are ways you can help yourself, and I think that's the biggest thing I can say to anyone who's going through anything or has been through anything like this, is do reach out to those healthcare professionals who may be able to recommend something for you. Without going to my doctor, I never would have got into the therapy that I was in. I would have learnt the meditation techniques that I did, and okay, I don't use them very often, and you know, it can help. I just thought with, you know, International Women's Day and everything, I wanted to give a voice to this. I wanted to give a voice to the fact that this happened to me, that it's not uncommon for this to happen. Over social media, I don't see people speaking up and talking about it. And I don't know if it's because they're ashamed it happened, if they feel they're responsible, I don't know. But I want to make sure that people do feel like they can talk about things. I was fortunate, like I said, that I had people around myself, and I surround myself now with people who who do have my back and do understand, or can at least understand me when I say that I'm not ready to talk about something, you know. If you guys don't have that, but you need to talk, you're more than welcome to contact me on Instagram, send me a direct message, and I'll always be here to talk to you guys. So yeah, I mean, I know, like I said, it's a bit of a different video to my normal types of videos. Thank you guys for watching to the end. If you're still here, I really appreciate it. Part of this was a cathartic for me to kind of get off my chest something that I've been thinking about talking about, but I haven't. And also, like I said, just to share some awareness around it happened, and you don't see people talking about it, but it should be talked about. I was really fortunate, nothing serious happened to me. I was really lucky that I was with someone who I could trust and I was safe around. But yeah, just be careful out there, especially as we get into summer, we get into those events and there's going to be more people around, so do just be careful of yourself. But like I said, if you guys want to chat, you know where I am, and I'll see you in the next one.